Hey YouTubers, today we have a Bosch dishwasher that won't drain. You may be getting an E24 or E25 error, and this is pretty common for Bosch dishwashers. They're good machines, they clean really well, they're very quiet, but they can have drain problems, and very infrequently will it be a problem with the drain motor. It's usually something that gets caught in the drain tube and it's blocking the water from being able to get out. So the water should come up to as high as where my finger is when it fills, probably after about 4 minutes. If you open the door and look, it should be about that high. And that means it's filling correctly, but when you set it for drain and you close the door, it should, within about 2 minutes, should drain all that water out. And if it can't drain it out, you'll get that error, E24, E25 error. So looking underneath the sink, I can see that it says a black drain tube coming right into the sink drain. And the white tube underneath is coming from the dishwasher. It goes up to a thing over by the kitchen faucet called an air gap. And then the water kind of makes a U-turn and goes down through the black tube. So now we have a full contingent of water. It's all the way up to the top of the round filter handle. So I'm gonna see if I can drain the water out. I'm gonna press the start button for 4 full seconds. And then when I close the door, it's gonna take maybe a minute or two, but it should start to drain. I'll hear the drain kind of pulse. And I'm gonna take this cover off. So once we get this cover off, if we set it for drain, we should see a column of water coming out at this little center tube. About 3 inches high would be really good, about as high as my knife right here. But in our case, when we set it for drain, it's just kind of dribbling, just barely coming out of that little tube. And that almost always points to there being a blockage somewhere. So I'm gonna press that start button for 4 full seconds, and then I'll close the door. That should start the drain, and I should get this sudden big column of water shooting out, and that would mean that the drain motor is doing great and there's no blockage, but instead we get that little dribble. So my suspicion is there's something caught in the drain tube, that white tube that comes up to that white air gap thing here by the faucet. Where it connects though, there's something blocking the water flow. Where it connects to the air gap, it gets smaller, and where it gets smaller, it's getting stuck. So I'm doing that same thing where I press start for 4 seconds, close the door, see if I can get this thing to drain. So it should just shoot out, again, about 3 to 4 inches high would be very normal, but we're getting just a little dribble. See that? Almost nothing. And then the machine just can't empty out the water in the prescribed amount of time, and the computer gets mad and stops the cycle, and the dishwasher will not continue. Your dishes don't get clean. I'm gonna put something down in that hole while it's trying to drain, this long screwdriver, and I noticed that it gets slightly better. So I'm thinking there's something caught right where that tube connects. And we're gonna go over next how to get to that and clean it out. It's actually pretty easy, just take you a couple minutes. Doing this yourself, you could probably save a couple $100 from having a technician come out and do it. And it's not that hard to do. So one thing I'll check too is I'll reach down in here and feeling with my fingers toward the front of the dishwasher inside the sump, I can feel this plastic impeller cover, and I can feel that it's locked in place. If it wasn't locked in place, that could create some trouble, but that one feels good. So again, my suspicion is this thing. So I'm gonna use my pliers to loosen this plastic nut. I'm gonna go lefty-loosey about maybe 4 or 5 turns to get the nut off. And then I'll push the whole air gap thing down through the countertop down into that bottom space underneath the sink, so I have a little bit more room to work. It's really hard to try to do this while it's still in place. So I'm gonna push this thing all the way down with my finger. I'll pull it down and get it to where I have a little bit more working ability, makes it easier. Here's the air gap, and the white tube brings water into it. It makes a U-turn there where we saw water coming out, and then it goes down another tube, the big black tube, into the sink. So I'm going to remove this white tube from the air gap, and in this instance I just have to take a standard head screwdriver and loosen this hose clamp. Once I get that off, I can then wiggle the hose off and put it in a bucket. When I did that and I started the drain, it just got rid of the water right away. So now I let a bunch of new water come in, and I'm going to press the I'll wait 4 seconds, I'll press it again, and I hooked up the air gap again, and this time, now I get a big column of water. Yeah, that's what we're supposed to see. So that's like at least 3 inches up. It'll pulse like that. It'll pulse, it'll wait for a second or two, and you get another big shot of water. That was about 5 inches up. So that really points to a strong drain. Now I'll put that little cap back on. That's where the water makes a U-turn. It hits that cap, and then it goes down through that big black tube. And now, it will get rid of the water for us. So I'm going to test it one more time. Close it. I can hear it gurgling, and now the water's totally gone. So that really worked well, and it was easy to do. It's just a matter of me taking that white tube and disconnecting it from the air gap, and then putting that big drain tube into a bucket, and then turning on the drain and just letting whatever was in there come out. In this case, we found that there was just a pistachio nut shell, just half of a shell, happens to be almost the perfect size to get caught inside the tube. And that's what was limiting how fast the water could escape from the dishwasher. It's very common. I've seen that probably 20, 30 times in the time I've been doing repairs. Here's the little pistachio nut shell, and that was the culprit. So the other thing is just trying to remember to really rinse your dishes before you put them in, because something that size can sneak past this center filter, and it can actually sneak past the impeller and then start shooting up the drain tube and get stuck there at the air gap. So we got this one working. We now have that column of water is correct. The machine exits all the water quickly, and you won't get the error, and these fine customers are back in business.